All right, to commemorate my 500 subscribers, and it's official, I'm at 500, at least for now. After I record this, I'll probably see that 2 or 3 have probably dropped off and taking me under the 500 mark again. But as of now, I'm at 500 subscribers, and to commemorate 500 subscribers, we have ourselves another QandA-anon. So let's get cracking with your questions. First question, by juxtaposition, who do you think was the worst president of the United States, and why do you think that? Well, I'm not a presidential historian by any stretch. I'm not much of a historian at all. There are I have an interest in history, and there are things that I've looked into and other things that, I don't really know very much about. There are vast gaps in my knowledge base on this subject, so take what I say with a grain of salt, of course. As for the worst presidents, I would say Lyndon Johnson was pretty far down there as far as being both a warmonger and somebody who expanded the intrusive authoritarian nanny state exponentially. He was pretty much a disaster as far as I can tell. Woodrow Wilson, also a warmonger, pushing the whole American empire, make the world safe for democracy, League of Nations agenda. Not good at all. Of course, there's FDR, another warmonger, another authoritarian statist. But of course, he got reelected 3 times by the American people. So much for democracy, eh? Or for constitutional republic, or whatever. But again, I am a constitutionalist, and I think that what we've seen, what is alarming, is the exceptions that are the ways in which various branches of the government, including the executive branch, just feel free to not follow the Constitution, to treat the Constitution as if it's irrelevant. I think that the presidents who are more likely to do that are they're the ones who I'm more likely to see in a negative light. Again, based on my knowledge of my limited knowledge of presidential history. I would also say that Lincoln, he was a complicated figure, and I'm not going to just rip on him totally, but I do think that the way that the war between the states, I'll go with what would be the politically correct definition of the Civil War, if respecting the South were a politically correct thing to do. I would say that the way that war was conducted was an atrocity, with Sherman and Sheridan just running roughshod over much of the South, burning everything down, slaughtering livestock, just engaging in deplorable behavior, and to the extent that was conducted at the behest of Lincoln, I would say that Lincoln himself was a warmonger who has a great deal of blood on his hands. He suspended the writ of habeas corpus. He threw people in jail, or saw to that they were thrown in jail if they opposed the war effort. I'm wanting to give him his due because he was thoughtful. He showed himself to be thoughtful at times, and so forth, and the whole allure of Lincoln. But the real Lincoln, I think we have to be honest. This guy has a lot of blood on his hands, and it came back on him ultimately, in my opinion, with in the Ford Theater. Now, let me just add, I guess, one more thing. I think that, interestingly, strangely, some of you will find this strange, and you may hate me for it. As much as I deplore what happened under the Bush administration, the George W. Bush administration, the war on Iraq was a disaster, and I think blessed are the peacemakers. Any president who wages war or who drums up war, especially a foreign war, foreign entanglements, that was never what the American Republic was supposed to be doing in the first place. The way the Republic became the empire that it became was contrary to the wishes of the founders. In spite of that, I always kind of felt like W was sort of a nice guy. I don't know. I'm not saying he was a good president, but I always I never really liked the people who, like the snobbery of people who would make fun of him and put him down and talk about how dumb he was and stuff. That never really sat well with me. It just seemed like snobbery. I don't know. That's just my. So I'm gonna cut W more slack than he probably deserves, just because he never he in spite of waging these wars, which probably didn't have much to do with him. Let's be honest about it. It probably originated, from above his station. And I don't know to what degree do any presidents really have power, or to what extent are they just controlled, by the real puppet masters of everything. But I always sided with W when he would get mocked by, I don't know, some Stephen Colbert type or whatever. But that doesn't really have much to do with whether he was a good president or not. He was not a good president either. Paul Wright asks, would you examine the provocative lyrics of Rod Stewart's Tonight's the Night, Gonna Be All Right? Yeah. Open up your wings and let me come inside. Yeah, that's pretty damn provocative. Paul Wright also asks, if you had your druthers, who would you choose to be your lover? Betsy Russell, Phoebe Cates, Linda Carter, Michelle Johnson, Christy Swanson, Heather Thomas, or Kathy Ireland? Of these names, I know Phoebe Cates, Linda Carter, Heather Thomas, and Kathy Ireland. The rest, Christy Swanson sounds familiar, but I don't know. I can't summon up her visage. But so of those four whose names I recognize, I would have to give the edge probably to Linda Carter in her prime as Wonder Woman. Phoebe Cates would probably be second. So I do like brunettes. Paul Wright also asks, if you had a time machine, would you travel to 1981, the birth of MTV, or 3021? I would like I would much rather go back to 1981, culturally speaking, and live there for a time. I guess if I had a time machine, that would mean I could just come back when I wanted. 3021 would be more of a gamble because I don't know what the world will be like in 3021. But I know that 1981 would be a net gain because the world as it existed in 1981, culturally speaking, is superior to the world as it exists now. But that's not saying very much because the world sucks now. Justin Fisher asks, which one of your works of fiction are you least satisfied with and why? Another good question. They're all my children. Everything I've written is a child of mine, and I love them all. But the one effort that I'm the most skeptical or dubious about is perhaps the time when I for some reason I got it within my mind that I wanted to write erotica, but literary erotica. I wanted to write about sex, but fictional stories about sex, but I wanted to write about it in a way that was not just coarse and smutty, but that was again that had some literary merit and did justice to the subject, the complicated subject of sex, and that effort. Somebody's mowing the lawn nearby, very nearby. So that was the collection entitled "This Malignant Mirage." So I'm not. That's the one thing I would say. That's the one work of fiction that I'm the most. I would have the hardest time revisiting. A lot of those stories I haven't looked back and read, and I would imagine if I did go back and read them now, I would maybe cringe a little at some things. Now, let me add that Colettes Dream Man, which was the final story in that collection, and what I thought, my thought for how it was supposed to, how Colettes Dream Man, the short story Colettes Dream Man was supposed to function. It was a short story, but it was a little bit longer of a short story. It's more novella length. And I sort of saw it functioning as The Dead functions in James Joyce's collection of stories, Dubliners, which I like very much. But I'm very proud of Colettes Dream Man, and I had it published as a standalone as well. So I would not include that work among the ones that I would be dubious or suspicious about. But the rest of the stories in that collection, I'm not so sure about. I kind of had to do it. You go where the Spirit leads you, and that was what I was being, that's what I was inspired to write about at that time for whatever reason. And I know it's difficult to, like some people would say, but you're a traditionalist, you're a Catholic. How do you square writing erotica with that? I mean, I think it's a good question. And I think you can square writing about it if the ultimate idea behind it is if what's animating it is not just of the loins, let's just say. But that's another subject. Okay. Vorgothion asks, hello, Andy. Do you think mankind can cope or be responsibly use the internet as a tool without losing its soul? Or do you believe the internet should be restricted? To better expound on what I'm getting at, see how the internet has completely debased and demoralized most into degeneracy. At the end of the day, all the information on the internet is getting pigeonholed into the control of tech monopolies with little or no access to the internet. With little or no access to the internet, however, man will at least revert to a simpler way of living. Now, on the flip side, you could see how the internet has introduced many men to God and other forms of enlightenment. But on the other hand, most do not seek such wisdom. So, you're asking, is there too much freedom because of the internet? It's interesting you frame it that way. I almost see it as the opposite. I see it as the reverse. I think the control grid has become more onerous because of the internet. Now, nothing is totally good or bad. It's always a cost-benefit analysis, and it's always a question of trade-offs. So there are pluses, there are things that I've benefited from being on the internet. I've reached people I wouldn't have been able to reach in a pre-internet age as an author, and also just doing this. So on the one hand, it makes it easier for you to reach people who are maybe like-minded and so forth. But I've been feeling more and more in the early days of the internet, I really thought, wow, this is great. This is freedom. This is what it's all about. But it seems that definitely in the last 5, 6, 7 years, the internet has become increasingly, well, of course, they're spying on you, they're harvesting your information, your personal, they're looking in on your emails. There's no doubt that it's serving very, very evil purposes. And so you frame it like there's too much freedom in your question here, but I see it as like it's restricting, it's constricting where we were once free. It's making it easier for our so-called rulers, our so-called leaders, to keep tabs on us and to propagandize us and to run their psyops. So that's my assessment of the internet right now as it stands. And I have thought about going off grid. I really have, and I might still do it eventually. I think that there's just a lot of misery being produced right now by people, especially in social media. There are just so many bad vibes out there right now that I don't think were around 5, 6, 7 years ago. But of course, everything has gotten crappier. Everything, the entire culture has grown just more divisive or divided, and there's more rancor and more less interest in people understanding one another, and more of just like just like, I'm tired of misery. I'm tired of it, and there's so much of it out there right now, and it's a bit overwhelming at times. So I'm not saying that we should all get off. That I'm not saying everybody should do anything. Work it out on your own. But that's my assessment of the situation as it currently stands. Justin Fisher asks, what made you convert from Anglicanism to Catholicism? I'm trying to think of a good, brief answer to that question. I was Anglo-Catholic for a time, and the reason why I was Anglo-Catholic was in the early years, right after I got married, my wife and I moved to a new town where she was going to school to get her. She was still getting her degree while working, and we found a church there that was Anglo-Catholic, a member of the church body called the ACC, the Anglican Catholic Church, and it was a terrific church. It was the liturgy was terrific. It was beautiful, and we were very we were very drawn to it, just because it was the liturgy was aesthetically great, and all of the good aspects, the sacraments were there, all the things that I've always liked about Catholicism were there. But then we moved away eventually from this town. When I was going to graduate school in Dallas, Texas, and it was harder to find another ACC parish where we were. And I have to say, I've always in my heart been Catholic. I've said this before. I've talked about this before, but to repeat what I've said before, when my parents married, they married in a Catholic church. My father grew up Catholic, and is still has for all of his life been nominally or culturally Catholic, but I wouldn't say observantly Catholic. But my mother grew up Lutheran, and she married my dad in the Catholic Church, and they both pledged that whatever offspring they had would be raised Catholic. And after I was born, my mom decided that she wanted me to go to a Lutheran church instead. My dad didn't object. So I honestly think that God did what he had to do to grab me back and put me where I needed to be. And that's what I honestly think happened. That's the reason why I eventually became Catholic. Like I said, I've been Catholic in my heart for much of my life. Okay. All right. Why don't we stop there for now? This has gotten a little lengthy, and I'll answer the rest of your questions in a little bit. Thanks for watching.